The dismissal of humanity's engineer. The great council hall was filled with the chatter of alien leaders, each representing a different species from across the galaxy. They were all here to discuss the future of space travel and to hear new proposals for a vast project that could change the course of galactic history. But today, all eyes were on one human. Derek Templar was nervous. He had traveled from Earth to present his design for a new type of warship, one that he believed could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. But looking around at the faces of the alien leaders, he saw no interest, only skepticism. Their cold, calculating gazes told him everything he needed to know. They did not take him seriously. For years, Earth had been dismissed by the alien species as backward, primitive, and inferior. They had watched humans grow, but only from a distance, always assuming they were too weak to be a true force in space. Their technology was considered old-fashioned, their ships too slow, their weapons too weak. To the galaxy's most advanced species, humanity was nothing more than a curiosity, a species still learning how to survive in the harshness of space. As Derek stood at the front of the room, preparing to show them his ship design, he felt the weight of their mockery. The room was silent, except for the occasional mutter among the alien representatives. It was clear that they didn't expect anything impressive. Derek could hear whispers of primitive, old tech, and this is a waste of time behind him. The Killfire ambassador, a tall alien with silver skin and piercing red eyes, leaned forward, his voice cutting through the silence. "Humanity's attempts at space travel have been laughable," he said with a sneer. "What makes you think this design of yours is worth considering?" Derek didn't flinch. He had expected this reaction. After all, Earth had been laughed at by these same species for years. But he had come prepared. He knew that this was his chance to show them that humans were not what they thought. He opened the screen beside him, and a holographic display flickered to life. The ship he had designed appeared, glowing in the center of the room. It wasn't like the sleek, elegant designs of the alien ships. It was rough, angular, almost primitive in appearance. The alien leaders chuckled. They didn't even need to speak to express their disbelief. Their laughter filled the room. "Is this some kind of joke?" the Zorithian ambassador asked, shaking his head in disbelief. "This looks like a child's toy. You must be joking." Derek's heart sank. This wasn't the reaction he had hoped for, but he had come too far to back down now. "This ship," he said firmly, "is not about looks. It's about function. And it's designed to do what no ship in this room can do. It will change everything you know about space combat." He paused, watching as the alien leaders exchanged glances. Their amusement was now replaced by curiosity, but Derek could tell they didn't believe him. They were still convinced that his ship, no matter how it worked, was nothing more than a simple human attempt to compete in a game they didn't belong in. "You talk of changes," the Raxian ambassador said slowly, "but your ship is built with old materials, using outdated designs. How can it possibly stand up to the technology we have now?" Derek didn't answer immediately. He knew that their question wasn't just about the ship. It was about humanity itself. They wanted to know why they should take humans seriously. They wanted to know why they should care about a species that had once been on the brink of extinction. But Derek had a simple answer for them. Because humanity has a way of surprising people. We survive. We adapt. We learn. And we don't give up. The aliens stared at him, unimpressed, still skeptical. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but Derek was used to it. He had lived through years of humanity being seen as weak and insignificant. He knew the galaxy's perception of Earth, and he knew that only proof would change it. But today, he was going to prove them wrong. "Allow me to show you its capabilities," Derek said, his voice steady. He had expected them to reject his ship outright, but they hadn't done that yet. He still had a chance to change their minds. The alien leaders exchanged looks, and after a moment, the Killfire ambassador spoke again. "Very well. Show us what you claim your ship can do." Derek took a deep breath and nodded. He pressed a button on the control panel, and the hologram of the ship transformed into a live feed. The ship was now visible in space, drifting in the vacuum. Derek wasn't just showing them the ship's design. He was showing them its potential. The Kilthar ambassador raised an eyebrow. This better be worth our time. Derek's hand hovered over the controls. He was nervous, but he was also confident. The ship's systems powered up, and as the aliens watched, the ship began to move. It wasn't fast or graceful, but it was steady and deliberate. It maneuvered through space with surprising precision. The aliens were silent, their earlier mockery gone. They were watching now, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. But Derek wasn't done yet. He pressed another button, and the ship's engines roared to life. It shot forward, faster than the alien leaders had expected, its sleek, angular design cutting through space with surprising speed. The council room was filled with gasps. This wasn't supposed to be possible. The human ship wasn't supposed to be able to do this, not with their technology, not with their designs. And yet, here it was, outperforming everything they had expected. Derek didn't look up at the aliens. He didn't need to. He knew what they were thinking. This is only the beginning. But one thing was clear. The dismissal of humanity's technology was over. It was time for the galaxy to realize that Earth had something they hadn't seen yet. Something powerful, something that would change everything. The mockery had ended, and the real battle for the future of space had just begun. The room was still. The council members, once full of doubt and mockery, were now eerily quiet. Direct Templar stood at the center of the alien council hall, watching as the holographic projection of his ship flickered and shifted in the air. The ship had performed well, but that wasn't enough. The council wasn't yet convinced. They had seen the ship move, but they needed to see more. They needed to understand how it worked. More importantly, they needed to understand why a human engineer could possibly make something that defied everything they thought they knew about technology. The Kilthar ambassador was the first to break the silence. His eyes narrowed, and his voice was filled with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "We saw your ship move, human, but that does not prove it is anything special. Any ship can fly. What makes this ship so unique?" Derek didn't hesitate. He had expected this question. This was the moment he had been preparing for. "It's not just about speed," he said calmly. "It's about the power behind the ship. The engine I designed is capable of generating energy at levels you've never seen before." There was a murmur among the aliens. The Zorithian ambassador leaned forward, clearly intrigued despite himself. "And how, exactly, does this engine work?" "Our own species have perfected the energy conduits that power our fleets. What makes yours so different?" Derek felt the weight of their skepticism bearing down on him, but he pushed forward. "What you don't understand is that our technology isn't based on more power. It's based on efficiency. My ship doesn't waste energy, it harnesses it. Every part of the ship is optimized to minimize consumption while maximizing output. It's simple, but effective." The Kilthar ambassador let out a sharp laugh. "Efficiency. I've seen primitive ships with similar claims, but none of them could withstand the strain of deep space combat. Are you truly telling us that a human-designed vessel could withstand a battle with our fleets?" Derek looked at him, his eyes steady. "I'm telling you that it could destroy your fleets." The room went still again, the weight of Derek's words sinking in. The alien leaders exchanged uncertain glances, clearly taken aback by his confidence. There was something in his voice, something in his conviction, that made them question their assumptions. Could it be true? Could a human engineer really have designed something so powerful? The Raxian ambassador, who had been quiet up until this point, spoke up. "You claim your ship is efficient, but what about its weapons? How does it compare to the advanced weaponry of our fleets? Our ships are armed with plasma cannons that can obliterate planets. Your human weapons couldn't possibly match that." Derek didn't flinch. "It's not about matching your weapons. It's about overwhelming them. My ship is designed to hit hard and fast. using surprise as a weapon. The element of unpredictability is the most dangerous thing in a battle. The Zorithian ambassador scoffed. Surprise? You expect us to believe that your primitive technology can outsmart us in a fight. The galaxy has far more advanced systems than anything Earth has to offer. Derek nodded slowly, allowing the silence to settle once more. He had expected this reaction, but the ship would speak for itself. He raised his hand and activated another sequence. This time, the hologram transformed into a full display of the ship in combat. The council members watched, their skepticism still present, but beginning to fade. The ship appeared in the hologram, navigating through an asteroid field with precision. As it emerged from the rocks, a fleet of enemy ships appeared in front of it. Derek watched the alien faces as the hologram played out, showing the ship's weapons in action. It wasn't a flashy display. The ship didn't launch massive waves of energy like the Zorithians or Kilthar ships did. Instead, it moved with incredible agility, dodging enemy fire and firing pinpoint shots that tore through enemy ships with brutal precision. The enemies, unprepared for the speed and accuracy of the human ship, were quickly overwhelmed. Within seconds, the enemy fleet was reduced to debris. "This is impossible," the Raxian ambassador muttered, staring at the hologram in disbelief. Derek didn't take his eyes off the screen. "It's not impossible," he said. "It's simple strategy. The ship is built to outmaneuver and outsmart your fleets. It's not about having the biggest weapons. It's about using your surroundings, using surprise, and using speed to your advantage." The Kilthar ambassador leaned back in his chair, his face a mix of awe and confusion. "But how? How did you come up with this?" Derek paused. This was the part where he had to explain something the council would never fully understand. "It's not just about engineering," he said slowly. "It's about learning from everything around us. Humans are survivors. We learn from our mistakes, from our environment, and from each other. We've taken everything we know and pushed it further than any other species." The silence in the room deepened as the alien leaders processed his words. The Kilthar ambassador, who had been so dismissive at the start, now looked thoughtful. "So you believe your human survival instincts are what give you an advantage?" Derek nodded. "Exactly. You think we're primitive, but that's the reason we're dangerous. We never stop adapting. We never stop learning. And when you underestimate us, that's when we strike." The room was quiet. The alien leaders were no longer laughing. They weren't mocking him anymore. They weren't even dismissing him. They were considering what he said. Derek had given them something to think about, something that could change everything. The Kilthar ambassador finally broke the silence. "I see now. Maybe we've underestimated humanity." The words hit Derek like a weight off his shoulders. It wasn't complete acceptance, but it was a start. For the first time, he felt like his people were being seen for what they were: survivors, innovators, and now, the galaxy was beginning to understand just how dangerous that could be. As the meeting continued, Derek knew that the Alien Council was no longer dismissing Earth's technology. His ship, his design, had forced them to rethink everything they believed about humanity. But this was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. Derek's heart raced as the council hall erupted into a flurry of murmurs. The aliens, once dismissive, now appeared uncertain. They had seen the ship in action, felt the raw power that humans had unleashed, but none of them truly grasped what it meant. Yet, they were starting to question their assumptions about humanity, and Derek knew it was only a matter of time before they had to face the harsh truth. Despite the shift in mood, the Kilthar ambassador, still skeptical, leaned forward. His expression was a mix of disbelief and defiance. "You may have shown us your ship's power, human, but one demonstration doesn't prove your ship can handle real combat." Derek didn't flinch. He had been expecting this challenge. "Then let's put it to the test," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not just talking about the ship's performance in a controlled demonstration. I'm talking about a real test, a battle. The Zorithian ambassador snorted, clearly unimpressed. You think we will risk our fleets for your petty games, human. But Derek wasn't backing down. Not your fleets, just a small portion of them. A real combat scenario, one that tests the limits of your ships, and mine. For a moment, the room was silent. Derek had just made a bold proposition, one that could either elevate humanity's status in the galaxy or get them wiped out. But he didn't care. He had built the ship to survive. He had built it to win. He was confident his design would stand up to whatever they threw at it. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting between skepticism and curiosity. Finally, the Raxian ambassador spoke, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You truly believe your fragile little human ship can withstand a real battle against our fleets? Derek nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to believe. I'm asking you to see for yourselves. The alien leaders hesitated. They had underestimated humanity before, and now they found themselves questioning whether their assumptions were wrong. They were all too proud to admit it, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Slowly, they agreed to the challenge. Minutes later, the holographic projections shifted again. This time, it wasn't a demonstration of speed and agility. This time, it was a full-scale battle simulation, one that would test every aspect of Derek's ship. The ship materialized in the holographic space, surrounded by a fleet of alien ships. The hologram showed a star system, vast and dangerous, filled with debris fields, asteroids, and energy storms, an ideal battlefield. This is real combat, Derek said, his voice steady. We won't be fighting in a sterile environment. This is a test of strategy, endurance, and adaptability. My ship will use the environment to its advantage. The council watched in stunned silence as Derek's ship engaged the alien fleet. The ship's movements were swift, almost unpredictable, as it wove between asteroids and energy storms, dodging incoming fire. The alien ships tried to lock onto it, but they couldn't keep up. Derek's ship moved like a ghost, striking with surgical precision, using its surroundings to hide, then strike again. It wasn't a one-sided battle, however. The alien ships fought back fiercely, their weapons raining down on Derek's ship. For a moment, it seemed as though the human vessel might falter. But the ship's design was meant for this kind of situation. Every component was built for resilience. The hull was reinforced with alloys from Earth's deepest mines, able to withstand impacts that would have shattered most ships. The engines, designed for efficiency and speed, let the ship glide through the battlefield like a predator stalking its prey. One by one, the alien ships fell. The fleet began to break apart, their coordinated assault falling apart as they couldn't predict Derek's ship's next move. The alien ships, larger and more powerful, were no match for the agility and unpredictability of the human design. The final blow came when Derek's ship used a nearby asteroid field to trap the remaining enemy ships. With a series of rapid, calculated moves, the human ship maneuvered between the debris, forcing the alien ships into a narrow corridor where they couldn't escape. Then, with precision, it launched a devastating attack, destroying the last of the enemy fleet in a single strike. The room was silent again. The holographic battlefield dissipated, and the alien leaders were left staring at the empty air, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The Kilthar ambassador was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. Impossible. Derek didn't speak. He let the silence linger, knowing that the council was struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what had just happened. Their disbelief wasn't surprising. They had seen the ship's power, but they hadn't truly understood the brilliance of its design. Until now. The Zorithian ambassador shook his head, his previous arrogance gone. We thought your species was primitive. We thought you were nothing more than a nuisance. But now. He trailed off, unable to finish his sentence. The Raxian ambassador, too, was silent, his mind clearly racing. For the first time, he understood that humanity's true strength lay not in brute force, but in their ability to adapt, to outthink their enemies. Derek didn't have to say anything. The alien leaders were realizing it on their own. Humanity was more than just a species trying to survive. It was a species capable of shocking the galaxy, of changing the rules of war. It was then that the Killfire ambassador stood up, his voice firm but respectful. Perhaps we were wrong about you, human. You've proven that your ship is a force to be reckoned with. But the true test isn't in the battles you've won. It's in what you do next. Derek nodded, his confidence unwavering. You'll see. We're just getting started. The council chamber was still, heavy with the realization of what had just transpired. The alien leaders were trying to process what they had just witnessed. The destruction of their fleets, the unmatched precision and unpredictability of Derek's ship. It was all too much. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were forced to face the uncomfortable truth that they might not be as advanced as they thought. Derek stood calmly, watching as the alien leaders exchanged glances. Some of them were still in shock, others were slowly coming to terms with what they had seen. For Derek, this wasn't just about proving the ship's capabilities. It was about proving humanity's worth. The Killfire ambassador, his earlier arrogance gone, finally spoke. I admit, I did not expect such power from your species. Your ship, it's not just a weapon. It's a statement. Derek nodded. Humanity doesn't rely on overwhelming numbers or brute strength. We rely on ingenuity, adaptability, and precision. That's what my ship represents. The Raxian ambassador, still grappling with the loss, spoke up, his voice cautious but respectful. You've proven that your ship can handle our fleets, but this was a simulation. What happens when you're truly outnumbered? What happens when the stakes are real? Derek's eyes hardened. We'll adapt. And we'll fight until the last breath. We've survived far worse than this, and we'll continue to do so. A tense silence followed, before the Zorithian ambassador finally spoke. And what of the rest of your fleet, human? This ship may be impressive, but a single ship cannot win a war. Derek smiled, a knowing smile. You're right, but this ship is just the beginning. The council looked at him, confused. They had no idea what he was talking about. The ship they had seen was a masterpiece, one that seemed to defy the very laws of warfare. But Derek wasn't done. He had more in mind. This ship wasn't the pinnacle of humanity's engineering. It was the start of something much larger. We've been building something bigger than you can imagine, Derek continued. And it's not just about one ship. It's about the people who built it, the people who will continue to evolve with it. The alien leaders were still processing his words when the holographic projection in front of them flickered. A new image appeared, one that made their blood run cold. It was a massive ship, unlike anything they had ever seen. Its sleek, angular design was a perfect blend of form and function. The entire vessel seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as though it was alive, waiting to strike. The size was unimaginable, far bigger than any ship in the galaxy. But it wasn't just its size that struck fear into the alien leaders. It was the fact that this ship had been designed to be a living, breathing entity. It was a ship that could think for itself, adapt in real time, and evolve as the battle progressed. This, Derek said, his voice steady, is our fleet. A network of ships designed for a single purpose: survival. The aliens were speechless, the weight of what they had just seen settling in. They had never seen anything like it. The ship before them was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. The ship could learn from its surroundings, evolve its tactics, and most terrifying of all, it could think for itself. The Zorithian ambassador looked at Derek, disbelief in his eyes. You've created a fleet of living ships. Derek nodded slowly. Not just ships, a new kind of warfare. Our technology isn't just about raw power. It's about flexibility, intelligence, and survival. The human race has always been about fighting for a future, no matter the odds. And this is our answer to the galaxy's threats. The Kilfar ambassador stepped forward, his voice laced with genuine respect. You've proven something we never thought possible. You've shown that humanity is not to be underestimated. But we need to understand something. How do you plan to use this technology? Derek's eyes met the ambassador's with a calm certainty. We will use it to protect ourselves, to ensure that humanity will never again be dismissed or overlooked. We won't stop here. The galaxy has no idea what's coming. A chilling silence fell over the room. The alien leaders were beginning to realize that humanity wasn't just a player in the galactic game. It was becoming the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever seen. The Raxian ambassador, still wary, crossed his arms. And what of us, human? We are not your enemies. But if your technology spreads, if you unleash this power, will you come for us? Derek didn't flinch. We're not here to conquer. We're here to survive. But if any force threatens our existence, we won't hesitate to strike back. This isn't just about power. It's about our place in the galaxy. We won't let anyone push us around. The council members exchanged looks, their expressions shifting. They had no answers. Humanity was no longer the weak, primitive species they had dismissed. Derek's ship had shattered their illusions, and now the galaxy would have to reckon with the reality of what humanity was capable of. As the meeting adjourned, Derek felt a sense of satisfaction. The council had seen the ship's power, and they had heard his words. The balance of power was shifting, and humanity was no longer at the bottom. The galaxy was on notice. The future of humanity was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Derek had shown them that humanity's time had come, and no one would be able to ignore them any longer. The alien council members were still reeling from the revelation. For centuries, they had believed that humanity's technology was crude, primitive, and far from being a threat. Now, Derek had shattered that illusion in one sweeping display of power. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted, and humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. Derek stood at the center of the room, watching the council members. He could sense their discomfort, their unease. They no longer viewed him as just a human engineer. They saw him as a threat. But Derek was not afraid. He had earned this moment, and now, the rest of the galaxy would have to live with the consequences of their dismissal. As the meeting adjourned, Derek returned to his ship, feeling the weight of the situation settle on his shoulders. He had made his statement, but this was just the beginning. The galaxy had no idea what humanity had truly created, and it was time to take that message to the stars. The council was no longer the only challenge. It was the rest of the galaxy, those who would look at the rising power of humanity with fear and anger. And there was one force in particular that had already taken notice: the Zorithians. The Zorithian Empire, a militaristic race known for their ruthless tactics and desire for expansion, had been watching humanity's rise closely. They had seen the destruction of their fleet and were not pleased. For them, the idea of a rising human power was unacceptable. They had long considered themselves the rulers of the galaxy, and the thought of sharing that power with a species they had once dismissed was infuriating. Behind the scenes, the Zorithian military had already begun to prepare. They were assembling a fleet of warships, determined to strike first before humanity could solidify its newfound power. They believed that by wiping out humanity before it could grow stronger, they would send a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. The Zorithians were still in charge. Derek, however, had anticipated this. He had been in contact with Earth's leadership, laying the groundwork for a defensive strategy that would ensure humanity's survival. The time for diplomacy had passed. It was time to prepare for war. As Derek boarded his ship, he felt a strange sense of calm. He knew the stakes were higher than ever before, but he was ready. Humanity was no longer a weak species in the galaxy's eyes. The ship he had created was a symbol of their resilience and determination. But it was not just about one ship. It was about the future of humankind. The Zorithians may have underestimated humanity once, but they would not make that mistake again. Derek's ship, along with a fleet of living ships, would be humanity's first line of defense. He had no intention of letting the Zorithians or anyone else take away the future humanity had fought so hard to build. Weeks passed, and the situation grew tenser. News of the Zorithian fleet's movements spread like wildfire through the galaxy, and the alien races that had once dismissed humanity began to take sides. Some offered support, while others feared the rise of a new power that could destabilize the galactic order. Derek and his engineers worked tirelessly, making modifications to the fleet, improving the defensive capabilities, and ensuring that humanity's ships were ready for the coming storm. The day arrived when Derek received word that the Zorithian fleet was in position. Their attack was imminent. "We can't wait any longer," Derek said to his team, standing in the command center of his ship. "The Zorithians are coming. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." He sent a message to Earth's leaders, informing them that the time for defense had arrived. The entire fleet was mobilized, and the human ships began to move into position, ready to face the oncoming threat. The battle was about to begin. As the first Zorithian ships entered the system, Derek could feel the tension in the air. His hands gripped the controls as he prepared to engage the enemy. His ship, a perfect blend of human ingenuity and raw power, was ready. The living ships, each one a masterpiece of design and function, were now fully operational. The Zorithian fleet emerged from the darkness, their ships looming large and menacing. But Derek was unafraid. He had already seen what his ship could do, and now he would show the galaxy. Humanity was not a race to be feared, it was a race to be respected. The first wave of Zorithian ships charged forward, their weapons firing. But Derek's ship was faster, more agile, and far more precise. The living ships responded in kind, their systems adapting in real time to the changing battlefield. One by one, the Zorithian ships fell. The speed and power of humanity's fleet were unlike anything the Zorithians had ever faced. They had expected an easy victory, but now they found themselves caught in a nightmare. Derek's ship and the human fleet were unstoppable. As the Zorithian fleet began to retreat, Derek's voice rang out through the comm system. "This is humanity's message to the galaxy. We will not be silenced. We will not be erased. This is just the beginning." The Zorithians had been forced to retreat, their pride shattered. But this battle was far from over. The galaxy had seen the rise of humanity, and there was no going back. Derek's ship had broken their minds, but humanity was far more than just a single ship. It was a force that had just begun to rise. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity had arrived, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The Zorithian fleet had been forced to retreat, their ships heavily damaged by the speed and might of humanity's ships. It was a stunning victory, but Derek knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The Zorithians would not give up so easily. Their defeat was a blow to their pride, and their thirst for revenge was bound to drive them forward. In the aftermath of the battle, Derek sat alone in the command center of his ship, his hands resting on the control panel. The soft hum of the engines filled the silence, but his mind was far from peaceful. He had won, yes, but the price of that victory was not yet clear. What would the Zorithians do next? Would they return with a stronger force, or would other races in the galaxy begin to view humanity with fear, seeing them as a new powerful threat? But Derek had no time for doubt. He needed to focus. The ship had not only broken the minds of the Zorithians, but it had also sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity was not to be dismissed, but the road ahead would not be easy. He stood up and moved toward the communications array. It was time to check in with Earth. The conflict was far from over, and they needed to prepare for whatever came next. The message he received from Earth's leaders was not what he expected. "Derek," the voice of General Harris crackled through the speaker, "we've been in contact with the rest of the galaxy. The Zorithians are furious. They've already begun rebuilding their fleet, and they're not alone. Other races, those who feared humanity's rise, are beginning to gather. We have no choice but to prepare for war. The words hit Derek like a punch to the gut. He had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. The galaxy, which had once seen humanity as weak and insignificant, was now uniting against them. Derek's heart raced as he processed the weight of the situation. "We need to move quickly," Derek said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "We can't let them rebuild before we strike again. Our ships are ready, but we need more. We need to show the galaxy that humanity will not be cowed." "Agreed," General Harris responded. "We've begun the process of building more ships, and we're looking for any allies who will stand with us. But the odds are stacked against us. We'll need everything you've got." Derek nodded, though there was no one in the room to see it. He looked out at the vast emptiness of space, where the stars shone bright and cold. The galaxy had just seen the first taste of humanity's power, but that taste was only the beginning. He turned to the ship's main console and activated a new communication link. It was time to gather the forces needed to face this new, united opposition. The galaxy's races may have been divided on many things, but one thing was certain: they had united in fear of humanity's rise. "Prepare the fleet," Derek ordered. "This time, we're going to take the fight to them." Weeks passed, and the situation only grew worse. The Zorithians had rebuilt their fleet faster than anyone could have imagined, and as Derek had feared, other alien races had begun to rally behind them, forming a coalition against humanity's growing power. But Derek was not deterred. The human fleet, though outnumbered, had one advantage: the technology he had developed. His ship and the living ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's engineering was far ahead of anything the aliens had imagined. It wasn't just about firepower. It was about adaptability, speed, and raw power. As the Zorithian coalition's ships moved into position, ready to strike the heart of humanity's defenses, Derek and his fleet stood poised to meet them head-on. The time for negotiations had passed. The time for diplomacy was over. The only thing that mattered now was survival. Derek stood on the bridge of his ship, surrounded by his trusted crew. The tension in the air was thick, but there was no fear, just determination. "We've come a long way," Derek said, his voice calm. "Today, we fight for the future of humanity. The galaxy will know who we are, and they will remember." The crew nodded, their faces set with resolve. They were ready for what was to come. The human fleet, a symbol of humanity's strength, was ready to face its greatest challenge yet. As the Zorithian coalition's fleet moved closer, Derek's ship powered up, its engines roaring to life. The living ships, once thought to be just an idea, were now a reality, an unstoppable force that could tear through any opposition. The battle that was about to unfold would determine the fate of humanity in the galaxy. It would be a battle like no other, where the power of human ingenuity and determination would face the combined might of those who had once dismissed them as nothing more than a primitive species. But Derek had no doubt. The galaxy would soon know that humanity was not to be underestimated. This was their time, and they would not let it slip away. The battle began. The tension in the air was palpable. Derek stood at the helm of his ship, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space before him. The Zorithian coalition's fleet had arrived, a massive, swirling mass of ships, each one bristling with weapons and advanced technology. It was the largest force humanity had ever faced. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Derek felt a steady calm within himself. The human fleet was ready. As the enemy ships loomed closer, Derek glanced at his crew. They were focused, determined, ready to fight. There was no fear in their eyes, only resolve. They had fought hard to get to this point, and they would fight harder still to protect everything they had built. The galaxy had underestimated them once, but that would not happen again. "Lock in the coordinates," Derek said, his voice firm and steady. "Prepare to engage at full throttle." The engines of his ship roared to life as the crew sprang into action, activating every system and preparing for the onslaught. Derek felt the ship vibrate under his feet as it powered up. They were about to face the most formidable force in the galaxy, but they weren't going down without a fight. The enemy fleet continued to advance, their ships gliding through the darkness like predators closing in on their prey. The Zorithians, along with their allies, thought they had humanity cornered. They believed the advanced ships and technologies that had once broken their minds were now a distant memory. What they didn't know was that humanity's technology had only grown stronger, more deadly. "Deploy the first wave," Derek commanded. "Let's show them what we're made of." The first wave of human ships surged forward, breaking through the space between them and the enemy. The human fleet moved with unparalleled precision, cutting through the darkness like a blade slicing through the night. Derek's ship led the charge, its weapon systems flashing bright as it unleashed a barrage of firepower on the advancing fleet. The Zorithians were caught off guard, their ships thrown into chaos as human technology proved once again to be far superior to anything they had ever encountered. The human ships weaved and dodged with astonishing speed, the advanced propulsion systems allowing them to move in ways the Zorithian ships simply couldn't match. Every shot fired, every maneuver executed, seemed to push the enemy fleet further back. The Zorithians had never faced anything like this before. They had underestimated humanity's ingenuity, and now they were paying the price. The battle raged on, a symphony of destruction as lasers, missiles, and energy blasts lit up the space around them. The Zorithians fought back with all their might, but their weapons, though powerful, were no match for the advanced human ships. Each explosion that tore through their fleet was a reminder of how wrong they had been to dismiss humanity as a primitive species. Derek watched the chaos unfold, his heart pounding in his chest. He had dreamed of this moment for years, when humanity would finally prove its worth to the galaxy. And now, here they were, fighting not just for survival, but for their place in the stars. The thought drove him forward, and he tightened his grip on the controls. "We're winning," one of his crew members said, awed in their voice. But Derek wasn't ready to celebrate. The battle wasn't over yet, and he knew the Zorithians would pull out every trick they had to turn the tide. He couldn't afford to be distracted. "Stay focused," Derek barked. "This isn't over. Not yet." As the human fleet pressed forward, a new wave of Zorithian ships emerged from behind a moon, their cloaking devices rendering them nearly invisible. The surprise attack sent shockwaves through the human forces, but Derek wasn't caught off guard. He had expected the enemy to use this tactic. "Activate the enhanced sensors," he ordered. "We'll see them coming." The enhanced sensors on the human ships flared to life, cutting through the interference and revealing the Zorithian ships hiding in the shadows. Derek's fleet was ready to meet the new threat head-on, and they did so with precision, tearing through the Zorithian ranks with ruthless efficiency. But the Zorithians weren't the only ones with a trick up their sleeve. As the battle raged on, a massive new warship, larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever seen, emerged from the heart of the enemy fleet. The ship was a behemoth, bristling with weapons and shields. It was clear that the Zorithians had been saving their trump card for this final showdown. Derek's heart sank as he watched the warship's guns charge. The energy blasts it fired were unlike anything he had ever seen, cutting through space like a hot knife through butter. The first shot hit one of humanity's ships, tearing it apart in an instant. "Get us closer to that warship," Derek commanded, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to disable its weapons." The human fleet, already battered from the previous waves of attacks, gathered together and launched a full assault on the warship. The next few minutes felt like hours as Derek's ship charged forward, weaving through enemy fire, dodging explosions, and getting closer to the massive Zorithian ship. The Zorithian warship unleashed a final devastating shot, but Derek's ship was already on top of it. With one final surge of power, Derek's ship fired its most powerful weapon, a new energy pulse that he had kept secret for this moment. The blast hit the warship's core, sending shockwaves through its systems. The Zorithian warship exploded in a brilliant burst of light, its massive form shattered into pieces. The battle was over. The Zorithians were defeated. Humanity had done it. They had proven to the galaxy that they were not to be dismissed. Their technology, their will to survive, and their unity had carried them to victory. Derek looked out at the wreckage of the Zorithian fleet, a sense of triumph washing over him. But even as he allowed himself a brief moment of relief, he knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had seen humanity's power, and now they would never forget. The message had been sent. Humanity was here to stay, and no one would ever underestimate them again.